I think it's funny that we're talking about this, but I guess because it's July, it makes sense. So EA Sports recently came out with its top 25 power rankings. Tennessee was left out, but it's a video games ranking, so it doesn't really carry that much weight. But in order for Tennessee to be among the ranked teams for in real life rankings, there are a few players that I think have to shine every game. I'm Paige Dower, this is the Field Pass. Off the top, it's Nico Collins, the wide receiving core, and James Pierce Jr. They are the foundation to this team if they are to be a team vying for a college football playoff spot or to be among the top 25 teams ranked in the country. All the best teams has its foundation of talent on every single game, which reminds me of a quote or statement that Coach Josh Heupel had a season ago where he says, not all 11 or 22 players can take their turn being off. All successful and great teams, their group of talent is always on. You look to the magic created in that 2022 season, their top talent was pretty much on every single game. So to have any of that magic filter itself into this 2024 team, that'll have to be true again. But what does that look like? Well, if we start with Nico, he was one of the most highly touted players in the 2023 recruiting cycle. So he came to Rocky Top with expectations sky high, through the roof. But what did we see from Nico a season ago? Well, he appeared in 5 games. Of course, one of those was a start in the Citrus Bowl against Iowa. So we kind of got our first true look at what Nico could do when it was outside of garbage time. He ended this season 28 of 45 for 314 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. And what we saw during the game against Iowa in the Citrus Bowl, while it was a run-heavy game because Tennessee was taking advantage of what Iowa was showing them, we saw that Nico was able to take what he did in Orlando and continue that to and through spring ball because his coaches and teammates consistently talked about his high IQ, his ability to get through his reads and progressions, and even when plays break down, he was always able to make something happen, whether still using his arm, his legs, or getting it to one of the tight ends or running backs. There were a few times where we didn't see that, but it was evident that he was able to continue to develop and grow. So it's important, especially when we look to this 2024 season, that for him to be able to set the table for Tennessee, to give them a chance to be successful this season, those first 4 games will be very important for Nico, especially when you look to Oklahoma as they open their SEC conference play. It'll be the first true road game as well. Of course, they're playing NC State. That's at a neutral site. So I guess technically it's a road game, but again, it's that neutral site. What else will allow Nico to have success to continue his development is the connection that he's able to have with his wide receiving core. Of course, a year ago it was a run-heavy team, and you've got guys like Dylan Sampson coming back to help continue that momentum and that presence this season in 2024. But being able to stretch the field vertically will be really important for this team, especially, again, if you're looking to kind of recreate that 2022 magic where they were able to stretch the field quite a bit. Nico had 28 completed passes a season ago. 14 of those went to 2 players. It went to Caleb Webb and to Squirrel White. And thankfully for Tennessee fans and Tennessee itself, both of those players are coming back this season. Now, Squirrel White's entering his junior season, and it's one that really needs to be a breakout year for Squirrel. He proved last year that he already has some good chemistry with Nico, but having that reputation as a speedy slot receiver, we need to see more of that shine in 2024. I'm sure a lot of all fans still remember that catch he had in the Orange Bowl against Clemson. And of course, who can forget that over-the-shoulder touchdown catch and the opening drive against Alabama, winning in tight coverage, especially in that play against Alabama and Tuscaloosa. It's that type of play, that physicality, that even despite his size, he's able to go up and win those one-on-one matches. Nico has proven that he can get it in tight spaces. We need to see Squirrel and maybe even Nico establish that type of connection, be able to stretch the field vertically early and often to continue having success this season. Of course, Caleb Webb is the other wide receiver that we'll talk about who Nico really needs to take a next step with this season. Now, Caleb Webb, he's shown that he has a versatility to line up in a number of different positions for Tennessee. He hauled in 7 catches for Nico a season ago, going for about 67 yards. And then in the game against Iowa, he was 2 of 3 for 18 yards. And if we look at some of his other stats in his redshirt freshman season, he appeared in all 12 games, He had 16 receptions for 166 yards and a score. So if we kind of like zoom out and look at that from what the top teams in the country did a season ago, 2 of the top 4 teams either had a top 25 passing offense or a top 25 rushing offense. Texas is the only team to have had both. Washington had the second best passing offense. So, of course, I'm not saying that you have to be a pass-heavy team to win in college football, but you definitely need a balance. And I think that's why the 2022 team was able to have so much success, because they did have that balance. Of course, last year really favored the run game. So I think with Nico maybe kind of having similar traits to Hendon Hooker, we'll be able to see this team really complement each other in the run game and the pass game. And of course, we know that causes all sorts of problems for opposing defenses. But speaking of defense, our next guy that I think needs to arise to the occasion, and did especially a year ago, is James Pierce Jr. And before we get to James Pierce Jr., I just want to have a little caveat that just the 2 wide receivers that I mentioned, they aren't the only 2 that I think will have success this season. I just think that they're 2 players that have to have success this season for Tennessee to overall have success on offense. Of course, Dante Thoron is coming back. He obviously ended his season with an injury a year ago, so hopefully he's able to take a step in the right direction. You look at Chaz Nimrod, and again, we talked about the balance on, running and passing. I think there'll be a number of guys on this team that will consistently shine for Tennessee. It's just those 3 players, especially in offense, that I think have to have success for Tennessee to have success as a whole. We will, of course, talk way more in depth about other players on this team as we get closer to the football season, so I do recommend you subscribe so you don't miss out on those conversations. And what can we say about James Pierce Jr. that hasn't been said already? He's coming into this season with an unreal level of hype and expectations and chatter around the defensive lineman. He's expected to maybe be the number 1 overall pick in next year's NFL draft, and for good reason. If we kind of just look back to what he was able to do a season ago, the edge rusher finished top in the SEC. He's one of the best defenders coming back this season, especially in conference play. He started in 3 games, played all 13. He finished with 27 tackles, 18 were solo, and he had a season-high 4 against Iowa, and it, of course, also featured a pick 6 for the edge rusher. So after coming off a fantastic sophomore season entering his junior year, a lot of people are comparing him to Alabama's Dallas Turner, which people might not like just because of the Alabama, but it sounds really great when you consider Dallas Turner went in the first round, 17th overall, really putting into perspective the talent that James Pierce is and the potential that he has in his junior season at Tennessee. The one negative thing I do hear, and it has some validity to it, is he is a bit undersized. I think the last I saw he was maybe 240, but Nico's a little undersized as well, and his secret has been peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. He credits holding on to or adding 15 additional pounds to those PB&J. So maybe him and James Pierce Jr. can maybe have a few more of those heading into this 2024 season over the next couple of months. But he has the speed, he has the counter. I just think maybe adding a bit more weight will also help him with his power. But again, just a lot of expectations coming in for him, for Nico, and hopefully what Squirrel White and Caleb Well can do to also complement those efforts. But again, thank you all for watching. Please subscribe and like to continue supporting what Jimmy and I are doing here. We think that those are, the 4 players that will give Tennessee a lot of fireworks this season. Of course, we'll dive into much, much more about Tennessee football over the next coming weeks. And then, of course, all the way through, December and January as the season gets going. But again, thank you for watching. Please subscribe and like, and I will chat with you all later this week.